I'm going to be working with the heart block that I made. I'll put the link down below for that tutorial. It's a full tutorial. I'm showing you how to draw that out and cut your pieces and put it together. I'm going to use this today in a throw pillow. And what I've got is, this is an old pillowcase that I used for the contrast pieces. I'm going to use that for the backing. I've got some 2.5-inch strips of blue, which I sort of made a while ago to use. I'm going to be using those. I've got 2.5-inch strips in the pink, 2.5 strips in the white, and these are 1.5-inch strips. I'm not sure right now how many I'm going to need, so I'll let you know at the end what we actually use for the project. And I've got some quilt batting. I have no clue what loft it is or even what it is. I've just got it lying around. So I'm going to be using that today. So let's get this project going and we'll see what it turns out like. And now I want to draw the lines where I'm going to my strips. So I'm going to start with the bottom edge, and I want to try and keep it as level as possible with the lines going that way. So I'm going to draw here. This is the line that I'm actually going to line up my first piece with, and when I sew the 1/4-inch seam allowance, it will catch the fabric. So I'm just going to line up my strip along that line and pin it into place. And I'm just going to go and sew a 1/4-inch seam down that first strip. I'm over at the machine and I've got my 1/4-inch foot on my machine, just a regular straight stitch. I'm going to open that out first and press that down. And now I'm going to do this top end up here. I'm going to use my square. I think I'm going to line it up there. Now I'm using a friction pen. It's an erasable pen. You can erase it with your iron, but you still need to be very careful because it can leave a mark on your fabric even when it's been ironed out. So that's where I want my sewing line. So now I've got to do 1/4-inch seam allowance where I'm going to butt up my fabric. So take your second strip, and then I'm lining that up with the second line, the furthest line, and pinning that down. And again, I'm just going to, all my seam allowances are 1/4 inch. And now I'm just going to press this one back. Now I'm going to draw the side seams. I'm going to try and keep it as square as possible. So this time I want it to make sure it's square with the side edges, the points. So I'm just going to draw a mark down here and a mark here because that's where I want my sewing line to be. And now I'm just going to move it up 1/4 inch and draw the line where I'm going to put my fabric against. I'm just taking my time with each one, so putting my fabric against that line and pinning it all down. And I'll just go and sew that seam down there. Press that seam over. And then the last one, I'm just going to mark the edges and move it up 1/4 inch to draw my line. Okay, and I'm just going to sew down that seam. Now I'm going to do a second border, and I'm going to use the pink. I'm going to use the 1 1/4 inch strips. I'm going to do exactly the same. So I'm going to start off with the 2 top and bottom edges, and then I'm going to do the side edges. Go and sew down that one and sew down that one. I'm going to press these open and repeat the same on the 2 sides. And I know that I want my drawn line an inch away from this line. For this time I'm just going to trim the ends. I'm going to put this aside for now and take these strips that I cut out. These are all 1.5 inch strips, and I'm just going to sew them in strips of 3. Going to press these seams. I'm just going to press them all to the same side, so I'm going to push them over, pressing them all the same direction. I'm just going to go and join these strips together now. So I'm getting longer. I'm going to cut this down, and I want 1.5 inch wide strips, starting with the blue and ending the white here. So I'm just going to cut that down there. I don't need that. And I'm just going to cut a 1.5 inch strip. And I need 2 of those that length, and that is 16 inches. So I need 2 of those at 16 inches. So I've done my strips. They are different lengths, but we're going to cut them down to size anyway. It's going to be in line with the edge of the strip. So I'm just going to continue that across, and that's 3/4 of an inch from the sewn seam. And I'm just going to line up my blue right at the edge like that, right side down, and I'm going to just go and sew 1/4 of an inch seam all the way down there. I think I'm going to just do a blue strip across the 2 bottom ends and then down the side. Okay, so I'm going to sew the bottom 2 first, and then I'm going to sew the sides. So I'm going to cut myself a piece of muslin that is 22 inch square and a piece of batting that is 22 inch square. So what I've done is I laid a piece of muslin down with the right side. Muslin doesn't have a side. If you've got a back, make sure it's the right side facing down. Then I'd used a piece of batting. You could also use fusible fleece, which would be so much easier to quilt. And then I've got my top. So I'm going to go and quilt that on my machine now. And I'm just going to sew along the stitch the seam lines. I'm going to change my foot for one of these. It's called a walking foot, and what it does is it keeps all the fabric moving together. So to do that, you have to actually remove the shank, the low shank piece on your machine, which is this piece. I could have left it on the foot, that's fine. So remove the whole shank. And then the walking foot, I'm just going to make that bigger. This piece here has to go over the top of that bar, and then this piece here is where it hooks onto the shank. So you have to slide it in, but also make sure that bar is pushed up and it sits on the top, otherwise it's not going to work properly. And what that does is that's the needle bar, and as that moves up and down, it moves the walking foot. I'm going to do that up nice and tight. I think I'm going to start around this square and work my way out. So I'm just going to put my needle down, and I'm just going to go nice and slow and try and stay in that seam. I've got my stitch length at 3.2. I'm just holding my fabric apart. I'm just going to work my way around the pattern. I'm just going to draw a mark 18-inch line. Now I want to do the back. I want the pillow to be 18 inches with a 1/2 inch seam allowance on the width, and I want it to be an envelope back, and I want it to overlap by about 2 inches. It's an 18-inch pillow and I want the overlap in the centre, so divide that by 2, which gives me 9 inches. Plus the 2-inch overhang, plus the seam allowance, which I'm doing as 1/2 inch. So that's 2 seam allowances, one either end, which gives me 9, 10, 11, 12 inches. So I want 2 pieces 12 inches high by the width of the pillow, which is 18 inches, plus the seam allowance, which is 19 inches because it's 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces of my back 12 inches by 19 inches, 12 inches by 19 inches, and I've got 2 pieces. So I'm just going to fold it over. I'm just going to eyeball it 3/8 of an inch, give it a press, and then roll it over again a second time and give it another press. And I'm just going to go over and I'm going to stitch that down, and I'm going to do it for both of the pieces. So I've sewn folded edge over on both of them. And now I want to measure 9.5 inches from the bottom up. 9.5 inches, and I'm going to do the same on this one. 9.5 inches, 9.5 inches. And now I'm going to take them together, both facing, and overlap, match the marks. Now that should measure, if I've done it correctly, 19 inches across. So 19 inches across and 19 inches down. So we have a 19-inch square. And I want the pillow to go under that way, so the top of the pillow hanging over. So I'm just centering it, so 1/2 inch over on those corners. I'm going to draw my sewing line. I'm just going to repeat for all 4 sides, so pinning and drawing the line. And now I'm just going to go and sew all the way around this edge, and at this bit here I'm just going to stitch over it a couple of times. Let's see what we have. And there we have a really cute pillowcase. Give it a press. "18-inch square pillowcase." If you like the tutorial, give me a thumbs up, comment, share, help me grow my channel. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.